that would be a shitty thing to watch, right?
So I got some complaints. I think I told you about how this room is just too white, and I kind of agree with that. So apologies. I've added a little bit of color. Was that did you say a race thing or something?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. All right. So I've added a little bit of color, literally color. This is a calendar of the church year. Have you ever wondered why we change the colors up in front of the church periodically? Or for like what the schedule is. This doesn't tell you why, but it does tell you what the schedule is, and it starts on December 1st, which is right here, the season of Advent, which is blue, and blue, I mean, is the color of the sky, so you think of heaven, hope, yada yada. There's colors and symbolism, you know.
Yeah.
And then Christmas is white, and the Christmas season is 12 days, ending with Epiphany, which is when the wise men came to see the baby Jesus. And then for a while we just kind of, the green season is like regular life, hence green, because like life is regularly green when it's trees and stuff. And we don't really have any special holidays during the season of Epiphany, but then we get to Ash Wednesday, and that's black. It's one of the only two black holidays of the church year. And then the season of Lent is purple, because Jesus was clothed in a purple robe during his passion as a sign of mockery. But in reality, Jesus is the king, and purple is a royal color, so it was actually kind of well-placed mockery. We got some red stuff here for Palm Sunday and Pentecost and Reformation Day, which are major individual holidays in the church year. Easter is white, and that is a long season, ending with Pentecost. And then the whole summer season is green. So we got a lot of green in the church here.
Everyone's white one.
Good question, Tim. So individual days are attributed to saints. It's usually traditionally the day that saint has died, although for a lot of saints we don't really know. And we're not too big on saints in the Lutheran Church. The Catholics kind of ruined it for us because they're like way too big on saints. They pray to them, and some people accuse them of worshiping saints, although that's not quite right. But nonetheless, it's kind of made us Lutherans a little uncomfortable with celebrating saints, so we don't make a big deal of it. But there are certain days that are attributed to saints. John the Baptist, St. Michael, who is an angel, St. Michael and all angels, and then of course All Saints Day, which we just celebrated last Sunday. And yeah, but otherwise, a saint is simply a holy person. That's worth writing down so you just see the saint equals holy one. And thus a saint is not necessarily like, you know, you've got all kinds of saints that are famous, like Saint Jacob, Saints Aquila, Priscilla, and Apollos, Saint Valentine, February 14th, of course, Saints Philemon and Onesimus. So those are famous Christians, usually in the Bible. We tend to restrict our saint days to saints that are in the Bible and not the 2,000 years of church history since then. But yeah, a saint is just a holy one, which means that you are saints. You who have faith in Jesus Christ, yeah, even though we don't always act like it. We have a very important belief in our church that we are both saint and sinner at the same time, until Jesus returns and makes us completely pure of all sin. We are simultaneously saint and sinner. In Latin, that's simul justus et peccator, simultaneously justified and yet sinful. And so you guys are saints. Congratulations. And the day that you die is going to be a saint day. So it looks like Everett, you'll be on, no, I'm just kidding. We don't know when you're going to die.
I know it, the day it was you.
Yeah, I don't know what 5 hours will be worth the day you die, but hopefully not much. All right, we are going to be,
That's the year I graduate.
what's the year you graduate?
No, 2030.
2030. Okay, we're going to go to page, what is it, 33 in my book, but it's not 33 in your book. We're doing Abraham and Jacob. It's page 29 in your book. So we are just going through the history of the Bible, and the Bible, you know, it covers the history of the whole world, but that's kind of a lot. So what the Bible likes to do is to focus more precisely on individuals and nations where God is hardest at work. And so we did Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, and then we had like 1,500 years that we just blew through in one chapter. And then we had Noah and his family, and we pumped the brakes on that for like 3 chapters. And then we gave a little bit of lip service to the Tower of Babel, mostly just to, boys, knock it off, mostly just to
Wait, it's pronounced Babel?
Babel, yeah, Babel, 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 I don't know. However you want to pronounce it. It's in Hebrew it would be Babel, but nobody calls it that except nerds like me. So, so anyway, the Tower of
Hey, give me your lunch money. I'm hungry.
the Tower of Babel. Where the crap did you get a wrench? You gotta fix something in here?
I had an engine fist in my locker.
Oh, that's special. All right, just don't hit anybody with it. The Tower of Babel, which was on this board last week, we used to explain how the people spread around the world. Because after Noah's flood, it was a pretty tight-knit group there. A little too tight-knit, a little Sweet Home Alabama tight-knit. And they didn't really want to leave each other. They were all one big happy family. And so once they were numerous enough and rebellious enough, God forced them apart by confusing their languages. And so, yeah, and so that's how people spread around the world. Genesis 11 ends with another genealogy that spans a few hundred years, and it eventually ends with a guy named Abram. And that's where we're going to start today, is Abram. Huh?
Abraham.
It's not Abraham yet, it's the same guy. The biblical Abraham gets his name from God, but for the first 75 years of his life or so, he had his name from his mom, and that was the name Abram. I assume it's his mom. So we're on page 29. Excuse me, pardon the condition of my throat. God's mercy. Think of a time when you deserved punishment, but you received mercy or forgiveness instead. What happened, and how did it make you feel? Share with a partner or write your thoughts below. So, can you think of a time when you deserved to be punished, but you actually got mercy?
All
And
the time!
follow-up question, do you want to share? I would love somebody to share a good story, but I understand. All right, Brooklyn's got one. Let's give her your respects.
Last night,
All right.
every time I supper, I'll lean my chair back like this, and my mom says the next time you do it, you'll be sitting on the floor. So last night I did it, and she was gonna make me sit on the floor.
But she didn't, even though you deserved it.
I don't receive
Yeah, that
any
works.
mercy. I just
You don't receive any mercy
no,
ever?
Like never. Just like,
Never.
oh, where you clean up.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, that's fun.
Yep.
I always am having mercy for what I do.
Why do you say that?
Almost always I'm doing something wrong. I know when Daniel got mercy.
I don't think you're always doing something
You
wrong. I
did
mean,
the
like in a
undersized
theological
test.
perspective, we're all sinners and we sin all the time. But I don't know. Yes, Daniel.
Oh, when I do not
Don't
know
hurt
if
yourself,
you're raising
dude.
your hand.
Yeah.
When I hit the gritty, my teacher told me not to hit the gritty anymore. But then she thought my friend did it, but they got punished. Oh, and I
Okay,
was
so that's less mercy and more cowardice.
but I had my mercy.
You had your mercy.
Yeah.
Your friend took your punishment for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean that's kind of what Jesus is about too. But Jesus at least knew and agreed to take your punishment for you. I get the feeling your friend maybe didn't want to do that. Anyway, in this section of narratives, I'm back to just reading on page 29. In this section of narratives, we will see how God showed mercy to Abram and his descendants. They didn't deserve to become God's people, and neither do we. But God's love for us is great, and so is his mercy. Who wants to read the big picture in the orange box there? Oh, Kaylee does.
Got it, Rob.
Do I? Wait, are we supposed
Yeah,
to?
Brooklyn said so.
Oh. Do I have the whole thing?
Just a big paragraph.
Okay.
The biggest one.
I'm gonna mess up. It's okay. God chooses Abram from the line of Shem to carry on God's promise of Savior.
Line of Shem, what's that
Who
mean?
does it?
Sorry. You don't know, I drew it on the board.
Huh?
Abram from the line of Shem, what does that mean?
Monkey.
That's a good question.
A descendant of Shem.
A descendant of Shem. Remember, I erased the board, but I had Noah and his wife, and then their sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And I even mentioned that the nation of Israel came from Shem. And they're called Semites, or Semitic people. And so Abraham, or Abram, as he's known right now, is from the line of Shem. He's a direct descendant of the son of Noah named Shem. Keep going.
God calls Abram out of his country to go to the land he will show him. God promises Abram that even though Abram and his wife
Sarai.
Sarai are childless and old, he will make Abram's descendants into a great nation. All nations will be blessed through him. Though Abram and
Sarah. They changed the names now. Isn't this crazy?
Okay, and Sarah sometimes falter in her faith. God keeps his promise, and Isaac is born when Sarah is 90 and Abraham is 100.
Oh, actually, that was still Abram and Sarai when I told you Sarah. But they suddenly changed to Sarah and Abraham. We'll talk about why. But go ahead.
Abraham shows great faith when God tells him to sacrifice his and Sarah's only son Isaac, intending to follow God's command, but God stops him. Abraham finds a wife for Isaac from his family back in his homeland. Isaac marries Rebekah and they have twin boys, Jacob and
Esau.
Esau. Though Esau is the firstborn, God chooses Jacob to continue the line of promised Messiah.
Very good. So I'll write down their new names in a moment, but this is the family tree we're looking at here. Abram and Sarai. What's going on? Stop over it. Why is it always you?
Like Cardi B.
Yeah. JoJo
Actually,
Siwa.
Know where this came from? It smells like gasoline. It's from a piston.
It's seven.
It's not that funny.
It's 7.
100
What's that song called? It's 7 what?
7 p.m.
Yeah.
95 degrees.
Okay, so this is the family tree we're looking at. Of course, Abram is descended from Shem, so I guess I'll throw that up there too. Shem, but there's quite a few generations there between Shem and Abram. But Abram marries Sarai, and they have a son named Isaac. And over the course of today's lesson, we're going to hear how Isaac was married to Rebekah, and the two of them had twin boys, Jacob and Esau. And so that's that. The narratives in this section are found in the book of Genesis, chapters 12 through 27, and they took place roughly between 2166 and 1930 BC. So that's like, what is that, almost 200 years? Over 200 years of time that we're looking at today. So, to put it in perspective, our country, Everett, come sit up here.
Oh, come on.
Just get up here. No, Brooklyn, scooch over and let Everett sit next to you, please.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, move your stuff.
You came so much
Yeah, you're just gonna permanently live in the front of the room. From now on. I'm really tired of you being a distraction to your neighbors.
Yeah, don't be distracted. God.
Daniel, I know you have a part in it too.
I didn't. He just pulls out a wrench and just like.
Yes, yes.
You don't have a wrench.
No, I don't.
Whose Bible is that over there?
Go.
Haley, is that your Bible? No.
That's when you pulled out.
Huh? Who?
Go, Everett.
I pulled that out? Oh, it's my Bible. Oh, okay. Well, in
Motorboat.
that case, I
What time is it?
should say pasta.
Yeah.
There you go. Bible belongs to pasta. Yeah.
I just keep
That's what I call
telling you to
myself
go on
sometimes.
the internet.
Okay, welcome to the front row, Everett. You've got a timeline there on the bottom of page 29, and that timeline is like literally all of Bible history, and that red circle shows that we have finally moved off of the creation part, and we're at Abraham. The account of Job also took place at the time of the patriarchs. This is like totally unrelated. We're not even going to look at Job. But it happened about the same time, so it's worth a mention next to the timeline. All right, so turn the page to page 30. This is, we got a really weird little timeline here, but we're going to just take turns reading through it because there's a lot of history to cover. Daniel, you sounded like you wanted to read.
Oh, yeah.
You raised your hand and everything.
What?
Yeah, you did. You were all like, yo, what's up? I want to read. That's what I assume your hand was saying. I don't speak hand. Now, go ahead and read the call of Abram. 2 paragraphs there.
Abram's father, Terah, took his family from
Ur. Yeah, I know. A really great name. It's like a caveman name. Ur.
I'm gonna name my
Going to
kid
Ur. Where are we going? We're going from Ur. Leaving Ur behind.
That's my kid's name.
Come here.
All right, you want to finish it up?
The Aaron, Seba, God called Abram out of Aaron.
Idolatry.
Idolatry to become the father of the great nation God's chosen people.
Very good. What is idolatry?
Adultery?
No, idolatry. It's a different word than adultery, which we're not talking about today. It's idolatry.
Adultery.
Context clues.
I don't know if you'll find much in there. Yeah, that's why I'm talking about it because there are no contexts.
Does it mean like don't kill your
No, idolatry is the worship of idols.
Oh
That's
no.
In ancient times, it was very common for people to literally build statues and then worship those statues. Those statues were called idols. So now, 4,000 years later, we have American Idol, where we worship celebrities instead.
Yeah.
But it's not quite the same kind of worship. But yeah, when Abram was called by God, he was not a good God-fearing man. He was a bit of a coward, as is evidenced by some of his behaviors, and he was not a follower of the Lord. He was a worshiper of idols. And yet God uses the unrighteous and bad things of the world to make good come into the world. And so he does that with Abram too. Read Genesis 12 verses 1 through 9. What did God promise Abram? Did you have a hand up, Brooklyn? Did you want to read?
No.
No?
I think Age wants to read.
No, she got her hand up. I see.
She totally did have her hand up.
She went-
Yes, she did.
I have this on camera.
Sure,
I
that
can
was
legit
out.
look at
I
it.
went like this.
Yeah, that's her
okay.
hand up.
Raise your
That is
hands.
literally having your hand up. Yeah. Maybe you weren't trying to communicate that way, but you know.
Trying to read.
This is a really good reading though. So read Genesis 12 verses 1 through
Let me
3.
just
I got it.
Alright, Aiden, go for it.
Yeah, Aiden does.
Where is it?
It's in your Bible.
Oh.
It's in your Bible, Genesis chapter 12. So just a few chapters after Noah.
We got
Aiden
Noah.
still got his Bible open from the Noah chapters. So yeah, that's probably a picture of Noah. you're looking at there.
Wait, what through what?
1 through 3.
I got
Genesis
you.
chapter 12.
Okay, the Lord had said to Abram.
Abram.
Abram,
That's our
my
guy.
dad's name. Abram, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I bless those who bless you.
Keep going. Bless those who bless you. Oh, you skip a line?
Oh.
I will bless those who bless you.
And whoever curses you, I will curse, and the people on earth will be blessed through her too.
What? Ur should not be in there. Ur is not part of this covenant.
And whoever curses you, I will curse,
There it is.
and all people on earth will be blessed through you.
Very good. Yep, all people on earth, including the people of Ur. But again, Ur is not part of this covenant. So, Genesis 12, what Aiden started reading, it looks like Abram is like a recurring character. God comes to Abram and says, it acts like they've got a relationship. They do not. Abram is only mentioned as the last name in the previous genealogy. Like, that's it. You know, there was this guy fathered, this guy fathered, this guy fathered. Terah fathered Abram. And I think there's maybe a footnote about Terah leaving Ur to go to Haran or something like that. Daniel. Okay, good job. Is that your mess or is that Timothy's mess? Okay, well, leave it to Timothy to clean up Timothy's messes, all right? So God comes to Abram seemingly out of the blue, and he makes this incredible covenant with him. He says, I will make you into a nation, will bless you. And not only will God bless you, but Abram, you will be a blessing to all nations.
Even Ur? Yeah.
Even Ur, yeah, especially Ur, yeah, because Ur, you know, actually knew the guy.
Like eat Ur.
Oh, that's
a
something.
lot.
What?
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Eat Ur.
Yeah,
Ur.
Yo!
it's like
Yeah.
Anyway. This is really important because this covenant that God makes with Abram is going to shape the entire Old Testament of the Bible. And even you could argue the entire New Testament. And this covenant is unconditional. Who remembers what a covenant is? We talked about it some weeks ago.
Oh, it's been like a guy that worships God.
Yeah.
Don't laugh at your brother before you finish a sentence. It's not a guy that worships God. What is a covenant? Kaylee, you have an idea? She deserved that. It's a promise. It's like a promise, but it's not a promise. Timothy?
It's a thing that it's like a.
What does Scooby Doo?
Yeah, it's a deal that they will like a law.
It's a what?
It's like a law.
A law. You're close.
Law.
We're going to call it an agreement. I think the word Timothy is looking for is a contract. So I'll write that down.
I know what it means. I just don't know how to explain it.
Yeah. So an agreement is let me get your attention. An agreement is kind of like you scratch your back, I'll scratch mine, right? So if I'm a farmer and you are a shepherd, I'll be like, hey, I'll give you 30 bushels of corn and you'll give me 10 rolls of wool. I don't actually know how wool is measured. But anyway, that's the point, is you make an agreement, and that's a covenant. That's a minor covenant, just a basic trade agreement. But covenants were the kind of things that would seal a deal between nations and kingdoms and stuff like that. And covenants almost always had, you will get this, and you will do this in return. But that's because covenants are usually made between humans. But when God is involved in the covenant, what can you possibly give to God that he doesn't already have? There's nothing. You can't give God anything that he can't just take for himself. So when God makes a covenant, it is almost always unconditional. And so it is here with Abram. God comes to Abram and he says, I will make you into a nation. That is like your descendants will be an entire country. I will bless you, and you, presumably your offspring, will be a blessing to all nations. And you, Abram, don't have to do anything. That's the long and short of it. God does eventually give Abram some stuff to do, but they're not conditions of the covenant. They're just things that God tells Abram to do, and Abram, as a man of faith, does it. But yeah, this sounds kind of vague. But I kind of hinted to what is coming here because I said that this blessing to all nations would not come from Abram, but from his offspring. So what do you think would be the blessing to all nations that God is promising Abram here? Or promising through Abram? What is the offspring of Abram that would bless all nations? This is like the Sunday school answer. Daniel? Jesus! Very good! So the covenant that God makes with Abram is roughly 2000 BC. Nah, I think I'll hold on to it.
Yeah, I did.
It is made roughly 2,000 years BC before Christ, and yet this covenant is already talking about how God is going to bless the world through Jesus. This is the second time that God has promised to save the world from sin through Jesus, although he doesn't name him. Who remembers the first time
That what?
that God promised to save humanity from sin through somebody's offspring? Daniel?
Was it Joseph?
No, we haven't talked about Joseph yet.
Oh,
Not Noah. It's earlier than Noah.
earlier than it's
Earlier than Noah, yeah. Not too many characters around before Noah. Yeah, it's Eve. On the very day that Adam and Eve fell into temptation and introduced sin into the world, even in the midst of his punishment of Adam and Eve for their sin, God made a promise to them. And that promise is that he would put enmity between the serpent and the woman, and his offspring and her offspring. And he told Eve and the serpent and Adam that the offspring of Eve would crush the serpent's head, and the serpent would strike his heel. That's the wording of the NIV that I learned. The ESV just says bruise and bruise. So you get this image of a man stomping the head of a serpent while the serpent sinks its fangs into the man's heel. And that is the promise that God gives to Eve all the way back at the very beginning. Sin has existed for all of 20 minutes, and God has already got a plan in motion to fix it. And so he renews that covenant with Abram. You know, Eve had all the babies. Literally every baby that has ever been born is the offspring of Eve. But Abram is just one of those babies. And so God is renewing his covenant not only with Eve, but also now with Abram. And so, yeah, Abram's offspring will be a blessing, not just for themselves and their own sake, but for... Hello, Tim. I think you have to sit on the floor now.
Oh, but I have to sit in the front.
That's
This is not
the
fair.
Tudor family punishment. Maybe back in the chair. Are you able to get up, Tim?
Yeah.
Okay, please get up.
But I should sit in the front.
No, he doesn't have to sit on the floor. Aiden and Daniel, knock it off. I took away the boy from between you guys, so now you gotta be more quiet. You're talking to each other. You've been talking to
See,
each
it
other.
wasn't me. It wasn't you.
Yeah, it was all three of you, but you're in the middle, and whenever I look up because somebody's making a commotion, it's always you who's making the
Who's
commotion.
the Rizzler?
You're the one with the brunch and the rain.
Did
No,
you
you're not.
speak Asian in the corner?
Yeah, we'll see. Aiden's still new. I'm hitting him with kid gloves. All right, back to the reading here. So Aiden finished the covenant that God made with Abram. That's very good. And then Abram goes on this journey from Ur to Haran, which if you've got a map there in the middle of your workbook on page 30, and maps are really cool. If you've ever read like fantasy and stuff like that, maps really help bring the story alive. Well, this isn't fantasy. This is reality. And so the map that you see there is a map of features that still exist to this day. That's the Mediterranean Sea, that big blue body of water on the left there. And the land of Ur, I want to say that starting point for Abram's journey is about maybe 3/4 the distance from the east coast of the United States to the west coast. So it's kind of like going from the Rocky Mountains all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. Except he's taken an angled route. Why is he going on an angled route? Why doesn't he just go straight to the promised land? What's he doing going way up that way? What's he following? Look at his red trail there.
Following blood.
Following a river. No, the red
The
trail.
blood river.
It's just a regular water river.
No, but
Yeah.
it's the blood river.
It's not the blood river. No. The red line is Abram's journey. It's only red to make it stand out from the other colors. The blue line is a river, because that's what blue lines mean on maps. And Abram and his family followed that river up to Haran. And then God spoke to Abram again from Haran and called him to go down south to the land of Canaan. You see that lovely green crescent-shaped area there on the map, kind of going around the Mediterranean Sea? Everett, you're on the wrong page.
Huh?
It's page 30.
I wasn't paying attention either.
Okay, well, Aiden, so, yeah, go ahead. We gotta get moving. All right, so that's God's covenant with Abram. That's the most important thing. Abram went to Egypt because there was a famine in the land. What's a famine?
One in your family, like the fam.
Nice try, yeah.
That's a woolly
let me read here under Egypt. So the word Egypt is on your page. Abram listened to God and journeyed with his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot to the land of Canaan, the land promised to his descendants. He settled near there between Bethel and Ai, but soon a famine made them go down to Egypt. So a famine, some Bible vocabulary for you. Famine is when there's no food. So usually it's because there's no rain, but that's kind of separate. So we'll just put no food, no water. But basically, Abram couldn't live in that place anymore because there was no food. So he and Sarai temporarily went to a different country called Egypt. And that is why the little red line on your map doesn't stop at the Promised Land, which is, you could Mamre, M-A-M-R-E, is one of the cities there. That's kind of Abram's home base. But for a while there was no food, so he went all the way down to Egypt. What is that, Tanis, it says? I'm not sure if it's even in the Bible. But that might be the city that he traveled to. And then what did he do to Egypt? What did he do in Egypt? This is kind of an interesting story. Abram was afraid when he went to Egypt. He was afraid because Egypt's king Pharaoh would look at Abram's wife and think, wow, she's a babe, and then take her for himself. I'm not even joking. So the king of Egypt would kill Abram and then be like, hey, now you're not hitched anymore, so come join me in my palace. Yeah, well, that's how it worked in those days. This was a very might makes right society. Yeah.
God dang, that's a bad young.
Yeah, that's what Abram was worried about. So here's Abram's solution, right? So a good, faithful man might look at that situation and say, I trust the Lord. You know, the Lord promised to make me into a great nation, and he can't do that if I'm dead. So I'm just going to trust the Lord. Abram didn't do that. Abram said, you know what I'm going to tell Pharaoh is that you're actually my sister. Yeah, because that way he won't kill me to make you a widow. You'll just be available, and he'll just take you. And that's what happened. Abram basically was such a coward and a sucker that he gave up his wife to another man, so that he wouldn't get killed because he was scared. How do you think his wife felt about that? Yeah, I don't think she was a fan.
Forcing you.
But then what if he just like, what if she just like left the guy trying to kill him and went back to him?
Well, it's the king of Egypt, so you can't just like leave the king of Egypt. He'll find you.
You could fight him and then
You could if you killed him.
What?
If you poisoned him or something, you could.
So then she'd be wanted for assassinating the king of Egypt?
And they just killed her.
He's like a god in their religion. So basically she just murdered their god. That's a great way to make everybody want to kill you.
Oh well.
Then what if you're like good at like karate and just kick them on the butt?
I don't think karate been invented yet. Yeah, that's in Japan. They're not there. Anyway, what actually happens is Sarah goes through with this plan because she does what she's told, I guess. And God actually sends a plague against Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and his whole house. And Pharaoh goes to his, I don't know if God comes to him in a dream or what, but Pharaoh finds out that actually Sarai, his latest babe, is the wife of Abram. And he's being punished for taking another man's wife by God. And so Pharaoh gives the wife back and is like, why did you do this? Why did you lie to me? And Abram's like, I was scared. And Pharaoh's like, just pray for me that this plague would stop on my house and then go away. So that's what he did.
What if she just like just took money and hid it in his like house or something and told him that he was stealing? Then
What would that accomplish?
then he would go to jail, and then she could go back to the person that she was first with.
And then they'd be like, just give it
Wait,
to
then
my mom.
the king of Egypt would go to jail? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't the United States. Like, the king doesn't go to jail.
Which one
Yeah.
president? That's the
Yeah,
one.
even in the United States, the president doesn't always go to jail. But this is Egypt, from 2,000 years before Christ, 4,000 years before now.
But they probably should go to jail.
The king is the god of their society. So yeah.
Let's not get political.
Anyway, the point is that God saw Abram through his journey in Egypt, even though Abram was not faithful to him. Let's go on to Genesis 15, verses 1 through 6. Abram wondered how God would make his family great when he had no children. Would his servant be his heir? No, God said. Abram would have a son from his own body. Then God pointed him to the stars and said, so shall your offspring be. Read Genesis 15, verses 1 through 6. Who's on that one?
Not me.
You're looking right at it.
This is actually 4.
Are you denying us? You were looking at 15.
I was actually looking at 16.
Okay, well, we're looking at 15, verses 1 through 6.
Wait, which one?
Genesis chapter 15, verses 1
Everyone
through
wants
6.
to read.
Through
Yeah, everyone
6?
wants to read. Everyone
Everett's
wants
bad
to
at me, he
read.
doesn't want to read. Go ahead, Nathan.
Oh, my throat's gonna get so dry. After this, the word of the Lord came to
The word of the Lord.
came to Abraham. Abram.
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 Same
I
guy.
forgot.
He's our main guy now.
Do not be afraid. Wait, what's it again? Abram?
Abram.
Yeah, Abram. That's my daughter.
Just think of it.
I and your shield, you're very,
Girls.
you're very great reward. But Abram said, oh, so. What is that word?
O Lord God.
No. Oh, so.
Oh, sovereign. I bet it's sovereign, isn't it? Oh, sovereign Lord.
Sorry, yeah, Lord. What can you give me since I remain childless and the one who will inherit my
Estate, house.
estate? We're on two different things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're reading the New International Version, which is a different English translation than the rest of us has. Daniel, why don't you let him
You just read this.
excuse me. There you go. Yeah. All right. Fine. Good job, Aiden. Daniel, you can pick it up at verse 2 of chapter 15.
I got it. I got it.
15.
Alright.
Sure you got it?
What for what?
Just start reading and I'll cut you off. when
After
I'm
these
done.
things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Fear not, Abram said, I am your shield, your reward shall be very great. But Abram said, O Lord God,
Tongue twister.
what will you give me, for I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Esler of Damascus.
The heir of my house. Eliezer of Damascus is not related to Abram. It's just Abram's very old.
Damascus.
It's Damascus. Yeah. Go ahead. Keep going.
And Abram said, behold, you have given me no offspring, and a member of my household that will be my heir. Bro. Hero?
Come on now.
The word is heir.
Heir?
It's a silent H. Yep. Heir.
Oh.
It means somebody who
Do I
inherits
get
your
to keep
stuff.
reading?
Yeah. Please do.
And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. This man shall not be your heir, your very own son shall be your heir. And he brought him outside and said, look toward heaven and number the stars, and you're able to number. And if you're able to number them, then he should. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be.
One more verse. You got this.
And he believed the Lord, and he continued
Counted it.
counted it to him as righteousness.
Very good.
Yeah.
So God makes this covenant with Abram. I will make you into a nation, I will bless you. And then literal years go by and there's nothing. And eventually God comes back to Abram. He's like, hey Abram, you're still my guy. And Abram is like, God, I don't have any kids. Like, how am I going to be made into a great nation if I don't have any kids? Right now, everything that I own in this life, which is a lot, God had blessed him and made him rich. Everything that Abram owns is going to go to this guy, Eliezer of Damascus, who's just like a buddy because he doesn't have any family.
All he's saying is like, just give me my mom.
Sure. And so God renews his promise to Abram, and he assures him that, I'll put it in red here, he assures him that it will be from Abram's own body, be a son from Abram's own body.
Look at that.
Now, who's missing from this addition to the covenant?
Noah.
Okay, there's a lot of people missing.
Shem.
Huh?
Shem.
Not Shem. Whose body is the son going to come from? Abram's body. That's what God said. The son from your own body. So Sarai, Abram's wife, hears this, and she thinks, well, maybe I'm not part of this. And so she says, why don't you make a baby with my handmaiden, whose name is, what is her name? Hagar. Yeah, this is legit what they did. So by Sarai's advice, Abram hooks up with Hagar, and they do make a baby.
Yo.
No.
It's okay.
No, they were feeling all freaky.
This is literally what happened. Yeah, you don't hear about this in Sunday school for some reason. What's that?
Did I go to the bathroom?
Sure, if you want to miss this awesome soap opera we have.
I
to
kind of do.
Alright.
Captain.
So yeah, so Abram and this other lady named Hagar, who was given to him as a slave by Sarai, have a baby, and his name is Ishmael. And Abram, loves him. It's a son or whatever. But God then returns in Genesis 16, and I think it's in Genesis 16. We're not going to read it because we're running out of time. But God returns and says, no. Ishmael is going to be a great nation, but he's not the one that I promised you. And so God renews his covenant once again to include and Sarah's own body. And when he renews this covenant, this is when he does the big name change. So the name Abram means exalted father. It was just a name that was given to him when he was a baby.
Wait, and Abraham means.
Nah, we're gonna no exhaust.
Yeah.
Yes, very good. And Abraham means father of many. I don't have room to write all that, so I'm just going to write Abraham. And similarly, Sarai's name is changed to Sarah. I don't actually know what Sarai means, but Sarah means princess.
Oh.
And the reason God gave her that name was because, remember, the covenant was that God would make them into a nation. And what does a nation have as its head? A king.
Yeah.
And what do
Like
kings
Trump.
have? What? No, not a Trump. A king. And kings have princesses. That's, they have baby girls. And so the name Sarah means princess to indicate that she is going to be the mother of royalty, just as princesses are the mother of royalty.
He's a princess.
But yeah, once again though, this whole Ishmael thing is just a show of a lack of faith on both Abraham and Sarah's parts. They're getting old. Sarah is 90 and Abraham is 100.
I thought queens were the
Is that Queen's
The borough of New York City?
No.
Is this a joke? Okay.
No,
They slay.
I thought it was
wild.
Okay, Sarah means princess. I don't know what else. You mean like opposite the king is the queen?
No, like
Just
said
say
the
the
princess were the royal I thought it was a queen.
Yeah, a queen sits across from the king, or whatever, however you want to say that, but their daughter is a princess. So I don't know. My guess is that God wanted to match her given name closely enough, so he calls her princess. Aiden, what are you doing?
Crack.
No, I was putting my lead in my pencil in the storage.
Yeah, he ran out of lead.
Alright. Anyway, we gotta keep going. If you thought this was weird, wait until you get to the covenant of circumcision.
Whoa.
Hey,
Ishmael was 13 years old, and Abram was 99 when God appeared to Abram again. God renewed his covenant with him and gave him a new name, Abraham, father of nations. God told Abraham that all his offspring from that time forth were to be circumcised. God gave Sarai a new name as well, Sarah. What's the deal with circumcision? Who knows what circumcision is?
I know.
I do not.
Daniel, why don't you tell us? Go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead. Now I want to
That's
hear
all
this.
you're.
I want to hear Daniel tell me all about circumcision.
Alright, so
Why is he laughing?
Nothing.
If you know what circumcision is, you'd be laughing too.
You
Go ahead, Daniel, tell me what circumcision
So
is.
it's like
You don't have foreskin.
Okay.
the guy.
Sum it up. You don't have a foreskin.
I'm not gonna draw any pictures.
Yeah, do it. Your skills.
I wanna know what it is.
When a male baby is born, there is a little bit of extra skin at the tip of his member, that member, and it's called the foreskin. And circumcision is the act of surgically cutting off the foreskin from the penis. I said it. Yep, there it is. So, yeah. The word circum means around, and size means to cut. So circumcise literally means to cut around. So just all the way around
Doesn't the
there.
husband usually do that?
Well, Abraham did it to his own household. Eventually, in the nation of Israel, they had a specialized office for that called a mohel, is the title they
I
gave.
love it too.
Yeah, the mohel is the guy who does the circumcision. Anyway, the covenant of circumcision was meant to be a mark, a physical mark that would set apart God's people from the rest of the nations. We know nowadays, thanks to modern medicine and such, that it also is very good for cleanliness. There are lots of good health benefits to circumcision. But God, oftentimes in the Bible, does not explain why he gives these weird things to his people. He just does. Symbolically, the male member is the reproductive organ on the male. And so by putting the mark of the covenant there, it points to the future. Remember, this promise was in part for Abram, but by and large it was for his descendants, who would be made into a nation and who would be a blessing to all nations. And so symbolically, I'm often asked, why did God make him do that? Of all the things Abram could have done to mark his body for the covenant, why that? And the answer is because it points to the future offspring that is really the subject of this covenant. Abram would certainly live a good life, and so would his family, but the real purpose of this covenant that God gives to him is going to be fulfilled in his distant offspring. And so the covenant of circumcision is meant to point to that the babies that are born and their babies, because every male in Israel from now on is going to be circumcised at birth. Every male descendant of Abram is to be circumcised. Yes, Timothy?
Make sure they edit that one word out.
Which one word?
You know.
I'm allowed to say penis. Alright, eventually,
Black.
yeah, well, I have a video
Use
on.
blender.
Yeah, the other days are missing a good one.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
eventually, Abram does get the child of the covenant, and that child's name is Isaac. That happens 25 years. I'm in the middle of page 31. This timeline is kind of taking you all over the map. But we're in the middle of page 31, the birth of Isaac. 25 years after God promised Abram a son, Isaac was born. We're not going to read from the Bible because I want to get to the end of this lesson.
What time is it?
It is 4:47.
Don't worry about it.
The name Isaac means he laughs. And it comes from two things. One, when Sarah heard that she, at 90 years old, was going to have a baby, she thought that was so stupid and ridiculous that she literally laughed. And God was the one who told her that. And he was like, why are you laughing?
Ridiculous when you live till 900.
But they weren't living till 900 anymore. 100 was considered pretty old by the time of Abraham. Yeah, the human lifespan dropped like precipitously
Why?
after the flood.
Oh, after the flood.
Yeah, because we're all inbred degenerate mutants. Doesn't take long for genetics to catch up to them. So yeah, good question. But in the days of Abraham now, living 100 years was pretty good. And so Sarah was well past the childbearing age. And so she laughed when she heard she was going to have a baby. And then when the baby was actually born, her laughing was less in mockery and more in joy. But because his birth was surrounded by laughter, Isaac was named Isaac, which means laughter. Couple more accounts we need to get through. After Isaac was born, when he was 10 years old, give or take, God came to Abraham and said, Abraham, I got a job for you. And Abraham's like, yeah, anything for you, God. And do you remember what God asked Abraham to do?
Oh, he asked
This is like the only big story with Isaac in it, yeah?
to give Jesus presents.
No. Jesus is 2,000 years away. Abraham doesn't know anything
I
about
thought,
Jesus.
I thought,
Ever,
Mary,
knock it
I
off.
thought Mary was gonna have a baby.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, you're not listening at all. You're just playing. I can't tell if you're pretending to be an idiot or if you're actually an idiot. Okay, good. I'm glad it's an act for your sake. God comes to Abraham. God comes to Abraham when Isaac is still a young man, and God tells Abraham, "I want you to kill Isaac." And Abraham's like, "What?" God says, "Yeah, I want you to go to the top of this mountain and slay him on an altar and burn his body as a sacrifice to me." They would do that to animals. God's never asked that to be done with a human before, but Abraham's like, "Well, all right." And so he goes through with it. He actually has Isaac carry the fuel, the wood for the fire. And as they're going up to this mountain, Isaac is like, "Hey, Dad, aren't we going to sacrifice an animal? Where's the animal? Where's the lamb?" And Abraham says, "God will provide the lamb." But as far as Abraham knows, Isaac is the lamb. And he gets them up there, and they build the altar together, and then Abraham lays down the wood, and he actually ties up his son and places his son on the altar. It's a very dramatic scene. He's got a knife in his hand. He is ready to do the deed, and then God says, "Stop."
He's gonna stab his son.
He was going to sacrifice his son, because that's what he thought God wanted him to do. That's what God told him to do. But God said, "Stop." He said, "All right, you have now proven your faith. You're not going to kill your son, but I now," and God often speaks in human terms. God knows everything. So God already knew how this was going to turn out. But he tells Abraham, "I now know that you would not withhold even your only son whom you love from me." And so untie him, get him off of that altar. And Abraham is so relieved, and he finds an animal it's a ram whose horns are stuck in the thicket, and he sacrifices that ram on the altar instead of his son. And that altar, that mountain, later becomes the mountain where King Solomon builds his temple. I'm almost certain it's the same mountain. It's a very important mountain, and it's also very near the mountain where Jesus dies, where the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world, is sacrificed in your place. So some ties there. And then I have to at least mention Jacob and Esau. Abraham sends a servant to find Rebekah. She's a great woman. That's like all we need to know about her. When she and Isaac get together and have a baby, it's two babies, and they are constantly struggling in her womb.
Is it twins?
It is twins, yes. Yeah, they're constantly struggling together in her womb, and God tells her that there are actually two nations in her body, and the older will serve the younger. Even with twins, you deliver one at a time, and the one who comes out first is the older twin. And yet with Jacob and Esau is the older twin, and yet he ends up serving his brother Jacob. And Jacob has a fun name. His name means he pulls your leg. Literally, he grasps your heel.
Yeah. That's a joke.
What does it mean to pull your leg?
I'm pulling your leg.
Yeah, like a prank or a joke. Exactly. You're telling a lie. You're making stuff up. So when they were born, Esau came out first, but Jacob was literally pulling Esau's leg. I'm not going to draw that either. But if you imagine one baby coming out, and then like you think, okay, here comes the next one. You're like, oh crap, the next one's already coming. It's like a baby train up in here, a baby chain, because you got Jacob is grabbing Esau's heel and getting delivered that way. And so that's where Jacob's name comes from. He pulls your leg. If you wanted to give it a single word, it would be deceiver. He's a liar. And Jacob lives up to his name. He tricks his brother into selling him his birthright, and then when their father is on his deathbed, he is nearly blind, and he has this big, it's like a religious thing. He has a blessing from God to give to his oldest son Esau, but he's blind. And so Jacob comes into his father's room with hair, like animal hair, on his arms, because Esau's a very fuzzy, hairy man. And so Jacob fuzzies himself up, huh?
You know anyone that said triplets?
Do I know anyone that's had triplets? I don't think so, personally. But these are just twins. But anyway, Jacob disguises himself as his brother Esau and tricks his father into giving Esau's blessing to him. And then when Esau comes in, he discovers his brother's treachery and everything's up in arms. And Jacob actually has to run for his life because his brother is so angry. He's been tricked out of his birthright. He's been tricked out of the blessing. This blessing, the covenant given to Abraham, was passed down to Isaac and was supposed to go to Esau, but then Jacob came in and intercepted it at the last second.
Like
Like a football player, yeah. And so Esau is livid. He is so angry, and he wants to kill Jacob. And so Jacob has to flee. He has to run away from home. And that is where we're going to stop talking about Jacob and Esau.
Oh.
It's 4:55.
Yeah, that.
Told you,
Yeah,
we're not.
so let me make sure there's nothing on page 32. I often skip the last page of these lessons, which is a shame because that's what
Give me my
connects us
money.
nowadays. But Timothy, Daniel, knock it off.
Are you touching me?
Knock it off.
Okay, stop touching
I
me.
can touch
Yeah.
6 times every
We
Tuesday.
touch each other in here.
All right,
That's
so
free.
just guys, 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes, okay?
Come on.
I'll just give you money. Yeah.
So we've already talked about how the covenant that God gave to Abram/Abraham is ultimately fulfilled in Jesus. But in the meantime, we're going to see that great nation thing come to fruition. Abraham's descendants are going to balloon in number after just a few generations and become 1 million strong within 400 years. So that's a lot of people. But it all starts here with Abraham and Sarah having Isaac, and then Isaac marrying Rebekah and having Jacob and Esau. And then Jacob ends up being the one who receives God's blessing, even though he also is undeserving. And that's the big takeaway message that I want to give you guys, because from the very beginning, God's blessing has been given purely by grace. Abraham was not a good person. Jacob was a downright bad person. They did not deserve God's blessing, and yet God gave it to them. And so also with each one of us, we sin. We are bad people. The more you think about yourself and what a good person you are, if you're really honest with yourself, the more you'll realize, hey, I'm not a good person at all. God's law helps us to see ourselves for who we really are. It functions as a mirror. Daniel, why? Why?
I told you to make it big.
Yeah, that's all right. You don't need a participation grade for today. You can get a 0. That's cool. So God is in the business of giving his blessing and his grace and his goodness to people who don't deserve it. And that's what he does for you and for me through Jesus as well. We do not deserve his grace, and God does not expect you to earn his grace, but he gives you his grace just as he gave it to Abraham so many thousands of years ago. Let's close with Luther's evening prayer, and then I've got homework to hand out, so don't leave after we're done praying.
Also, Chris.
Let us pray. I thank you, my heavenly Father, through Jesus Christ, your dear Son, that you have graciously kept me this day. And I pray that you would forgive me all of my sins where I have done wrong, and graciously keep me this night. For into your hands I commend myself, my body and soul, and all things. Let your holy angel be with me, that the evil foe may have no power over me. Amen. All right, do not leave.